I used to be skinny, insecure, and literally going to the bar to chase women and everything with nothing to offer, man. Nothing to offer. And I'm looking so much for validation, and I was looking in the wrong places. What gave me something to offer was the strength that I acquired in the gym, the resilience and the mental fortitude that I have acquired through meditation, cold showers, starting the cold plunges, trying to be present in the moment. When I talk to my wife and she talks about lack of time, right? I did time blocking and I broke down, hey, the most time I spend outside of work and sleep is with you. It's not always the quantity of time, it's the quality of time. How many people spend 5, 10 hours with their spouse, but half of it on their phone? Somewhere along the line, comfort became our crutch, and we no longer lean into the discomforts of life, which allows us to pacify things that are happening.
Welcome to the Spear and Clover podcast, the place where military mindset meets the spirit of the puppy. I'm your host, Jason Skisick, the entrepreneurial evangelist, and each week I bring you the stories of visionaries who see the world as it could be and can't help but take action. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and review. This is the best way to stay in the loop when we drop new content. Don't forget, the conversation continues in our brand new Spear and Clover community group. Check us out on Discord or follow the link in our bio to join this free group for entrepreneurs or wantrepreneurs. Hey, entrepreneurs, does any of this sound familiar? Have you hired only A players? Purchased the latest fire plays from so-called gurus, consistently almost become an elite organization, only to have it result in talented employees regressing to mediocrity, tactical plays spiking performance and then fading away quickly, managers losing discipline and hunger, and either leaving or just coasting? Do you really think the difference between you and the industry-leading team is a hire or a slick new marketing play? That's the same tired crap my Chicago Bears have shoved down my throat for almost 30 years. Meanwhile, the Green Bay Packers have had two coaches in 50 years. They've had two quarterbacks for 20 years, and it seems like no matter who's on the field, they're a contender every single year. Many leaders buy the best playbooks, they draft the best talent, and they hire the best coaches, and year after year return without trophies. Who could blame them? Most business coaches, consultants, and so-called gurus only sell tactical playbooks designed to provide a brief spike followed by a return to business as usual. The truth is, winning is simple. You need a clear North Star supported by managers and role players that have absolutely zero uncertainty about how they can help the team win today. Our simple program helps you become a dynasty organization from top to bottom. Dynasty Defined not only helps you structure a team that's capable of consistently winning championships, but once you do, they'll be writing their own playbooks, recruiting the best talent, and calling their own plays from the field. The choice is yours. Continue to hope that the next hire or brand new marketing play will finally solve all your problems, or commit to winning permanently, roll up your sleeves, and let's get started defining your dynasty. I am beyond proud to announce that we are now accepting applications for Dynasty Defined. Cohorts are limited to 6 entrepreneurs, and they do fill up quickly, so head on over to www.spearandclover.com now to claim your spot. I can't wait to see you on the inside. As a culture, we seem to promote 2 types of people to the public eye. The first is a person who's capable of pretending to be talented, likable, and charismatic convincingly over a long period of time. This is what makes up the vast majority of famous people I've met. The second group, far more rare, that just are those things. They seem likable because they are. They seem talented because they are. These are people that you actually would enjoy having a beer with or going on a road trip with. Fortunately, today's guest is one of the latter group. Ted Phaeton has built a career as a public figure, first as a broadcast meteorologist, then as a news anchor, maybe, and now as the host of his fantastic podcast, The Modern Man. As a guest on his show, I quickly recognized the earnest way he goes about making a real and meaningful impact on the world. He's on a mission to help men better face the challenges and obstacles they face in the modern world. And if you ask him, there is no better, or if you ask me, there's no better person for the job. Stick around, and I am sure you will see why I and the people who give out Emmys like Ted so much. Please welcome my friend, Ted Phaeton. Ted, how are you?
Jason, it's amazing. Thank you so much for that introduction. I am truly humbled by it, man.
Brother, I love honoring you because you've honored me in the past, man. I think you're great. I think your mission is valuable. And I think you're a really, really well-suited person to go out there and do it. So I know that I think that, but folks at home are skeptical. So why don't you tell them a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, I appreciate it. So Ted Phaeton, I'm the son of two immigrants from Haiti, and I mentioned that because my story really starts with the sacrifice my parents made to give me the opportunity to have the life that I live. So I don't take it for granted, and really, I'm just out here trying to do my best. I've been lucky enough, and I'm blessed to have both my parents in my life still. Even a text exchange a couple of days ago with my dad, who just turned 81 last month. So
Wow.
having that guidance taught me a lot of hard work at a young age. I grew up in a somewhat poor neighborhood, but went to Catholic school. My parents worked harder to make sure that I had a good shot at an education. And that gave me a duality in life. It gave me two perspectives. One was, the whole saying of if you want to make more money, work harder didn't make sense because my parents were the hardest working people I knew. The
Mm.
other was I knew what it was like to see a 17-year-old sell crack to his mom to pay bills for the house across the street from me, and then go to school and have a 17-year-old girl crying because she got the base BMW model from her parents. So I was I was introduced to the bougie life, but also had that work ethic, which gave me the taste for the finer things in life, but also the work ethic to go get it. As I got older, I was blessed to have some good company around me, and that's really what kind of sparked the mission of Modern Man, was just realizing the positive male mentorship that's saved me money, that's saved me jail time, that's saved me lots of years of anguish and pain because I listened to some of the advice from those ahead of me. There's some lessons I had to learn on my own, as we all do, but it's led me to a great career in television, and it's led me to starting the podcast, which has me on that mission of connecting men in pursuit of their potential, because I realize that there's a lot of men out there, and to be frank and honest, there's just a lot of people out there, men, women, doesn't matter, who are looking for a community, who are looking for people who share the ambition that they do, who really want to genuinely see them win. Like, I think authenticity in today's day and age is something that needs to be highlighted and valued, because we have such a microwave society on social media, and I just hope to kind of highlight more of that authenticity in the world.
Yeah, and I think that's clear in your actions, right? I think your actions both on and off camera. Like even when we talk off, you're talking about doing cold plunges, you're talking about doing stuff that's freaking hard, right? Like you're doing. I've seen you doing things that are not for social media. Maybe you post them
Mhm.
on social media, as do I, and I've struggled with that. Initially thinking, well, if it's for me, then I'll do it for me, and I'm like, but if I'm going to do it, I might as well share that with people so that maybe they can follow by that example. But so it's interesting because you are composed in a way that is uncommon. Clearly, you're professionally composed in some ways, right?
Mhm.
And you come from a background of two Haiti immigrants that were super hardworking. Do you feel that you have always had that? Or do you feel that that's something that really was polished over time through Catholic school, broadcast school, things like that?
um I think it's a combination of the two. um I think my desire for things in life is what kind of gives me a certain umph for
Mm.
things, but I do think my parents were very intentional in the type of upbringing that I had. Some things as simple as when I was young, there was a few years me and my parents didn't get along too well, mainly when I first got into high school, because they never put me in sports. It
Mm.
wasn't until high school that I put myself in sports. And one of the most painful things I remember hearing as a 14-year-old kid or 15-year-old kid making the JV football team over kids who have played 8 years football before me was, man, Ted, you have so much potential. If you played a little bit longer, you'd be a starter on a team that won 5 championships in a row. like 5 years in a row winning the championship. And I remember going home to my parents, like, why didn't you put me in sports? And they said, because we wanted you focused on your school. And they also, to the credit and to your point of, was it always in me? I think so, yes, because they said, Ted, we know how you are. When you get fixated on a goal, when you find a passion, you just lean into it. So if you fell in love with sports at a young age, you wouldn't focus on school. You would just focus on that thing. So I think it was a bit of both. I think it was my parents conditioning me in a certain way, wanting me to learn a certain structure and pick up certain values. But there's also this little fire in my heart, this little drive that when I get fixated on something, man, I get fixated on it, and I explore it, I tweak it, I play with it, and I really see what it can become.
Yeah, you talk about what your parents, that decision and how they explained it to you, your parents. And I think that's really wise. And as the father of a young daughter who's only 18 months old, it's hard for me to imagine getting her to eat the snack that I want her to eat with wisdom. So what do you like what it's interesting, I guess the question I would say is, do you think your station in life or your background or your success has much bearing on the wisdom that you can gather through life?
Absolutely. I think the influences that I've taken and the examples that were in front of me has forged somewhat of a path for me, or an influence for me. I think I've forged my own path because my parents will tell you I went against the grain with everything. I'm the youngest of four. My eldest sister is a dentist. She has her own clinic. My other older sister is a chemist. My older brother, he was a Marine. He lived out in California as a sheriff's deputy. He's a firefighter. They did these traditional things, and I came out like, I want to be on TV. So I was always the wild card in my family, but I do think that the fundamental structures and values growing up is kind of what gave me the ability to strive in the certain environments that I found myself in. My dad used to tell me all the time, someone's always watching, someone's always watching, someone's always watching. Your reputation precedes you. You know, these are things that were burned into me. So when other people say, oh yeah, I've heard about you, or people who watch me on air and they meet me in person, they're like, oh man, you carry yourself so well, you know, I just automatically think like my parents always burned into me that someone is always watching, right? That's where my whole focus on integrity has come from. Whether someone's watching or not, I know whether I'm going to keep my word to myself. I'll even move my head aside for if there's video. There's a little award over here, and it's sitting right next to the Emmy. You mentioned the Emmy before.
Yeah.
So after winning this Emmy, my dad says this award is still his favorite award. And I got that in the 8th grade when I graduated from Catholic school from the 8th grade. And it was a strength of character and integrity award. And
Yeah,
to
that's
this
pretty
day,
valuable.
my dad's like, I don't care if you win an Oscar. That's my favorite award that you won when you were 13 years old. Strength of character and integrity. Because that's what they made sure I focused on. That's what they really drove home for me. And though I was a wild card, forging my own path along the way, putting myself in different environments, I think those values still allowed me to thrive in those environments that I went into.
Talk to me about the weight, though, that knowing everybody, knowing that someone's always watching, knowing that you're in a role professionally that, you know, doesn't have a lot of room for divergence of character, right? Is there weight to that, and how do you carry that?
Not well. I don't
Okay.
carry it well.
Because I should say,
Well,
hold on, before you answer that, I should say it's not like you're a wild man and like you're out like, oh, I wish I could be doing this wild stuff. But when we
yeah,
talk, it's like I can't imagine putting myself in your shoes, and there has to be some weight to that. But go on.
I think so some folks might be familiar with, you know, imposter syndrome, right? Or just being hard on yourself. I think that's what it's done to me. Is even my wife will say, she'll tell me sometimes like, you need to give yourself grace, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I had a 102 fever last week. Just I was sick and I was on the couch and I'm like, am I being lazy?
I feel that. Yeah.
And my wife's like, you're sick, relax. But yeah, I think, you know, there comes a way in terms of I probably judge myself harshly. I'm probably a little harder on myself than I should be. That sometimes does lead to imposter syndrome, self-doubt. And it also leads into unnecessary stress, man. unnecessary stress, because yes, I do think it's important how we carry ourselves, and I think it's really important how we show up in the world. And when no one's watching and the doors are closed, to be true to ourselves and really, keep the promises to ourselves. I love talking about not hitting the snooze button. I wake up, my alarm goes off at 2:20 in the morning. I don't hit the snooze button. I'm up and I'm out. And that's just been something that I've really used to help build my confidence. But at the same time, the weight that comes with that is a lack of grace with ourselves sometimes. And what I've had to realize, it's hard, is you need to drop the ego sometimes,
Mm.
because it's not always about me. And what I mean by that is I don't handle failure well. I can I can get defensive sometimes in terms of when I don't show up a certain way that I expect to, in terms of where I fall short. I will probably take that harsh, because internally I'm afraid of tarnishing that reputation or the relationship that I've established with that person. The reality is, drop the ego. They're probably not thinking about you, bro. Like,
Yeah.
all these people aren't always watching you. And yes, it's true that you have to um be aware and be professional, be caring, be kind, treat people right. But at the same time, people are going to remember how you make them feel, of course. But 9 times out of 10, if you're worried about, oh, why did I say that? Or why did I do this? And you're kind of beating yourself up for certain things, most people aren't worried about that as much as you are. And that's what I've had to kind of struggle with, build with, and continue to grow through, in terms of how I show up in the world, how I treat my integrity, and giving myself grace along the way.
I love that idea of giving yourself grace. What are moments or practices that you've done that have allowed you to put your ego down? Because that's a specific thing. And I think it's a thing that many people don't see the value in, but the ones that do, many of them are unable to do it. And so, where have you found success putting down your ego and trying to get a more objective view of the world?
One is the job that I'm in.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I'll wake up in the morning and I get an email. Someone's like, "Who dresses Ted? His suits are ill fitting." Like, literally, his suits are ill fitting, and I'm like, "This is a custom suit.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's tailored to me. It's ill fitting." But I mean, yeah, in the industry that I'm in, when I first started, you had to have a thick skin. Um, Good community, good friends. Before I even got into the industry, this was great. I love telling this story. In my internship, I would go to the news station, shadow the meteorologist, and he would go out on his lunch break. And this is back in the day where we had to use the DVDs, right?
Yeah.
So we'd pop the DVD in the control room, and I would stand in front of the green screen, and I would just go for an hour, Jason, over
Wow.
and over again on a weather forecast. And then I'd take the CD, I'd go home to all my college roommates. Love these guys, right? Senior year, I'm still good friends with them to this day, but we'd go home, they'd be finishing up cooking dinner, we'd pop the DVD in, and they would watch the whole hour and rag on me. Like,
Yeah.
why'd you do this? Why'd you say that? Ted, you're repeating yourself. But like, you have those moments because you build a relationship with people that have your best interest at heart. So you're not defensive when they try and critique you.
Mm.
So having those people, having that community of the guys and the girls that would sit down, like I had 5 roommates. So it was my buddy, his girlfriend, my buddy, his brother, and they're ragging on me, but I know they're trying to make me better. So it's easier to swallow that
Yeah.
pill. Whereas if some other person who might not have established that relationship with me, have not established that trust with me, I'm going to take offense to it,
Mhm.
right? So for me, it's dropping the ego enough with those people close to me to let them critique me, let them tell me where my blind spots are,
Mhm.
and I do that to this day. I'll have a few friends where I say, "Hey man, how am I doing?" And then I shut up and listen. I shut up and listen. That's the hard part, is because it's so easy to be like, yeah, and then, but listen, man, those are reasons to you, excuses to them, right? So shut up and listen. Let them pour into you, because if they care about you, they're trying to help. So
Mm.
that's really where I've worked on, finding that critique, finding that that whetstone to sharpen my knife, finding those
Ooh.
people who I've really admired and how they carry themselves in certain regards, and build that relationship and trust where I'm like, hey man, where am I messing up? Where are my blind spots? Like, what am I missing here? And that's even true for like my relationship. Early on in my relationship with my wife, we were having a hard time communicating. I called a buddy of mine who's in a 20+ year marriage. I admire it. And I said, hey man, my wife and I got into this back and forth, and we're having a hard time communicating. He's like, oh Ted, she's looking for codependence. She's looking for, so letting myself be vulnerable enough to talk to somebody about, hey, me and my girl having an argument, right? Because most guys are going to go to their friends, or most people will go to someone that their girlfriends and whatnot, and they're just gonna be, oh, he's just being difficult, or hey, man, she's just being crazy. Just let's have a drink and sugar it on the table. No,
Mhm.
I'm trying to solve the problem.
Mhm.
I'm trying to address it head on, and if that means I need to change, well, if you want this to work, you might need to change.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. When I met my wife, it was the first time where the objective in any given conversation seemed so small compared to the objective of spending the rest of my life with her. And I had never had that experience before. And that's why I was willing to make changes to myself. But you tapped in on something earlier in that I want to pull back because it's
Mhm.
important to this conversation. And that is, you brought this tape to your 5 buddies. And there is a uniquely masculine, especially in America, uniquely masculine way that friends support each other, and it's through ruthless violence of words and sometimes action, right?
Yeah.
I mean, literal physical altercations in some case result in like the desired outcome. And
Mm-hmm.
so and then when you talk about dealing with women, which by the way, they're the way that they deal with problems, I won't speak to. I'm not going to take
Yeah.
agency there, but I think it's different, at least culturally for us. And so why choose men's issues? You're somebody who is incredibly gifted with your mind and with your ability to present yourself orally and otherwise. Why choose men's rights? What is or men's experience? Why is that so
Yeah.
important to you?
Well, I mean, I give a lot of credit to my dad. I
Mm.
just finished I'm finishing a book by Abraham Herschel called Who is Man? And I literally sent him this text not too long ago of a quote from it, if I could share it. And the quote
Yeah.
was, self-satisfaction is the opiate of fools. Abraham Herschel, Who is Man, 1965. It's an old book that my dad gave me, and he texted me back from fathers to sons. And when I moved away from home, um, 750 miles away from the closest family member, friend connection that I've had. And I realized my habits early on were all right, made some friends, we're going out, we're drinking, we're doing this, and my mental health just wasn't there. And it wasn't until I had a good friend and established a good relationship that he was older than me, that I was like, okay, I started getting more direction. And I noticed that when I moved again to a new city, the same thing happened. I was replicating male mentorship wherever I went.
Mm. Hmm.
And again, saves me money, saves me jail time, saves me a lot of mistakes that I might have made, right? But I still wasn't satisfied with where I was in life. And one of these guys gave me a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy, Dr. Ronald Glover. And it talked about the importance of male mentorship, and how I realized I was a nice guy. I was a people pleaser. Talks
Mm.
about, at a young age, a lot of our influences as young boys with mostly female teachers, and then in high school trying to get all the women. It's easy for us to fall into people pleasing and also like pleasing women in terms of trying to court them.
Hmm.
And I realized I'm I'm showing some of these patterns that are in this book. Like it was like reading a mirror. Like it was, has this guy been following me? And in the process of reading that book, I actually started dating a girl, and it was shortly after my dad told me um, he found a pack of cigarettes and a bra in the closet when he came to visit, and we're sitting. And so if
How
you
old?
hear,
How old are you?
I'm 24.
Too
I'm
young, baby.
24,
You can't be having
25.
those two things.
Well, so my parents came to my apartment. At this point, I'm living in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm a meteorologist. Um, and and again, I'm going to the bars. I'm, pursuing women. I'm doing well in my career, but the only thing I had going was my career. Outside of work, my ambition was let's go out drinking, let's have a good time. I didn't have any good fundamental values that I was chasing personally as a man. I was just chasing the dollar at work. And I measured my success by how far in my career I can go and let's go out and have fun. And my dad found the found the bra and the cigarettes, and we're out on the patio drinking a beer, and my dad's like, hey, I found these things, and don't worry, I didn't show mom, I threw them out. And he said to me, he goes, son, and like I knew it was a serious moment, right? When he was just like, hey, son, he said, set your standard and demand it, and don't accept anything lower than that.
Mm-hmm.
And that resonated with me. Like for some reason, like, I mean, I hear it to this day, how vividly he said it, and such just intentionality, right? It wasn't just jiving back and forth. It was like, he wanted me to hear that. So that was ringing in my ear, and I actually slowed down. I wasn't pursuing women, and I'm reading this book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And at the time, my now wife, Jess, was just new to the area and stuff. And I remember she came over to go to a pool party, and I wasn't done folding my laundry yet, because what it talks about in the book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, it talks about setting your priorities, right? Setting your goals in life, being committed to those goals. Obviously, not don't be an a-hole to people, right? But it's a lot of times, instead of pleasing people, going to all the parties, all the birthdays and stuff, like have some boundaries for yourself. If you want to go to the gym 5 days a week, don't, we know some guys or some people who might take on the personality of the person that they're dating. Oh, I can't work out anymore because I gotta spend time with my girlfriend or things like that. So I wasn't playing that game anymore. So when Jess came, I was folding laundry, and I said, hey, we can go to the pool party, but I'm not done folding laundry yet. Jason, I'm in pajama pants and a wife beater. To this day, my wife will tell you that's the first time she found me attractive. And this was so counterintuitive to me. I'm like, wait a minute. By me sticking to my priorities, by me taking care of myself, I wasn't mean to her. I said, hey, you're a little early. If you don't mind, I got to finish folding. That's what got her. That's what got her attracted to me. Cause I was a man on a mission. I was a man of my word. And then I read the book, Mask and Masculinity, which highlighted the suicide rate amongst men. I think 2018, 70% of suicides were men. Research shows that men are socially isolated. When married men are surveyed, staggering number, almost 85 to 90% say that their emotional support is their wife. When their wives are surveyed, a staggering number of them say that their support is a small group of friends. So I'm realizing that, okay, hey, if we're people pleasers, if our only emotional support is our wives, what happens when that relationship fails? Because divorce rate is also going through the roof. A lot of guys are silently suffering and crying, and they're being impacted by mental health. And I've saw the value of what male mentorship and just community has done for me. And for some reason, I felt like I was uniquely qualified to speak on that. And someone said, like, why don't you do modern women? I was like, because I don't know the challenge of women. I don't know what they go through, and I would love to provide any aid that I can. The best I could do is support someone else who's on that hill and on that battle. But I can talk and I can relate to some of these guys who are just having a rough time. And the unfortunate truth is, it's one of the sufferings that happen in the shadow, or suffering in silence. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I could bring a microphone to this. Maybe I could help just a little bit. And to be honest with you, it started off as just that, like a little trickle. It was an idea I told a friend of mine who was a business owner. It turned into the most feedback that I've had. Sorry if I'm rambling here, but it turned into the most feedback that I've had from people afar, people who I haven't seen for years, calling me just to say, hey man, I see that thing you're doing with Modern Man, keep it up. And I realized, like, this is resonating with people. This is something that people keep talking to me about. Like, what's up with that Modern Man? What's up? And like these guys are like, pulling me to the side, like, I want to talk more to you about this Modern Man thing. I've been kind of struggling. And a lot of business owners are listening, like, hey, when the market tells you this is needed and you feel uniquely uniquely qualified to provide that service, lean in a little bit. So that's kind of how I kind of followed that trickle, from personal experiences and then positive feedback from those around me. And I'm also on the journey of trying to be the best man I can be, because my dad has been instilling that in me for a long time, and I'm thankful for that. And I also know that there's a lot of people who have grown up without a father, who are probably looking for that example also.
Do you think that this has been the condition of being a man forever, or do you think that there's been something that's changed that has alienated men where they're at? And before you answer, I will tell you that where I live, and this isn't everybody, so if anybody's listening, it's not you. But where I live, a lot of men do think like, I'm going to drink every night. I'm going to work my ass off until I have a heart attack when I'm 44. I don't have space for dynamic men's relationships or like going to do a thing with just the guys or whatever that might be. And I see a lot of unhealthy sort of like behavior patterns that are like pushed forward as the only option. Do you think this has always been the men's plight, or do you think there's been a change to culture, or to what do you think about that?
Um, I think it's relatively new. I think there's been a change to culture. And what
Mhm.
I mean by that is I think comfort is starting to kill us. Because there was a ruggedness back in the day. And not to say that it was always right, or to say that it was always moral. But we talk about rites of passages,
Yeah.
you know. There's a lot of guys who are trying to know that they're worth it, that they're worthy, that they're looking for that stamp of masculinity and approval from another man, most often their father, or a rite of passage,
Mm.
an opportunity to prove themselves and their worth. And life used to be hard, man. Life wasn't always as comfortable as it was. We didn't always have access to these vices that are so readily available. You open up your phone and you could look at websites that can numb you psychologically for however long you want, right? You go to the fridge or you go to the store down the road and you can just get yourself a six pack and pacify the life that you're living. So there's a lot of access to comfort that I think is somewhat of a new condition. I do think that the ruggedness and the difficultness of life builds character. We talked about the cold plunge and going to the gym and these things that I do that I don't share on social as much as I should, to be honest. But it's because I've found that before I've had some of these positive male mentorships and things around me, I used to be skinny, insecure, and literally going to the bar to chase women and everything with nothing to offer, man. Nothing to offer. And I'm looking so much for validation, and I was looking in the wrong places. What gave me something to offer was the strength that I acquired in the gym, the resilience and the mental fortitude that I have acquired through meditation, right? Cold showers, starting the cold plunges, trying to be present in the moment. When I talk to my wife and she talks about lack of time, right? I did time blocking and I broke down, hey, the most time I spend outside of work and sleep is with you. And it's also a chunk of, it's not, and pay close attention to this, it's not always the quantity of time, it's the quality of time. How many people spend 5, 10 hours with their spouse, but half of it on their phone, right? So learning to be present, learning to face challenges and show up. I think somewhere along the line, comfort became our crutch, and we no longer lean into the discomforts of life, which allows us to pacify things that are happening.
Mm.
Oh, me and my wife get into an argument. I'm just gonna go grab a six pack. She'll get over it. I'm gonna sleep it off. I'll sleep on the couch. I'll drink some beers or this, that, the other thing. You know, I used to think, oh, nothing wrong with, finishing off your day with a few beers and stuff. But like, okay, how is that serving me? How is that serving my energy for the next day to show up? I wrote in my journal earlier that, the world deserves me at my best. And more importantly, if it's not for the world, my family deserves me at my best, with enough energy to be present, with enough energy to hear what she's saying, respond, and give her feedback. Because there's some women listening who probably feel like, and I've heard women talk to me about this with modern man, like, I feel like I talk to my husband, he's just a wall. I can't connect with him. I can't
Mm.
connect. And it's like, because we're so disconnected from reality, that we need to learn how to reintroduce some of this difficultness into our lives. I'm not saying we got to go back to the rites of passages, but there is a level of pride, and there's a level of accomplishment that comes through finishing something hard. And where the rites of passages, they had the difficultness in it. They were dangerous because if they were easy, you're not accomplishing much. So it's kind of a long-winded way of saying that this is, I think, something that's relatively new, which is why I like the communities that we have. Because before, when I talk about, hey, putting in that CD and having my 5 friends rag on me, that puts your mind into fight or flight. That releases cortisol. That puts your body in stress. I'm getting verbally attacked, but not in a demoralizing way,
Right.
but in a constructive way, in a productive way. And I'm grown and I'm better and I'm growing from it. And that's what I'm really leaning into.
Yeah, while you're talking, I just picture like a tribe of hunters going like marching towards the hunt, or like a tribe of warriors marching towards war, and they're like giving each other shit about the way you put on your face paint like a girl, like, or whatever, like, or like, hey man, hey, you gonna throw that spear into the woods again, or can we kill something this time? Like, I can see that conversation happening, and it did. You better believe it did, right? And now I think just by the way that things have gone, which is in many ways really great, it's just difficult to imagine that. By the way, if you're on a job site right now, which I've been, and I'm sure you've been around, you're having that conversation still. But if you're in a corporate environment, if you're in HR meetings often, and this isn't a bad thing, those things needed to happen, maybe for community and culture to improve in the way that it has. But the outlet isn't there, which means we need to be deliberate about the choices we make, which means we need to be deliberate about who we spend our time with. And so talk to me about, because strength of character is on the wall behind you, and you're talking about surrounding yourself with men. It's very easy for us to surround ourselves with the wrong men, and the same brush strokes paint a very different picture. And so how do you know that you're in the right group of men? If somebody's listening to this now, like, yeah, I'm in a group of men and it doesn't feel good. Like, what was that like? How do you know?
I'd say it starts with, what are you pursuing, and what's your direction, right? And I say that because I was in a fraternity in college, and there's rites of passage. I was a pledge, and I remember the night I crossed, going through Hell Week, and then being a brother, and then having pledges of my own. And I could look back and say that wasn't rites of passage to be a man. Those were boys leading boys. And the reason it was boys leading boys, because what I wanted was what they wanted. We wanted to throw parties, have fun, and all that. So a lot of the relationships we have, and I've heard this before, where relationships are a mirror. The people that you surround yourself with tend to be similar in values, in goals, and in aspirations as you. So the first thing is starting with, where do I want to go? Right? Because if we don't have direction in common, if we don't have the values in common, if we don't have the same goals and aspirations, we're not going to vibe, right? So it starts with you and identifying, what is it you want out of life? What is it you're going for? And it could be foundational things, it could be materialistic things, but at the same time, it has to have somewhat of a picture. And I would say this, it was said before that, no man is a template, right? But I would have different advisors. When I first started the Modern Man, I had a panel. And I remember one was really pouring into me for business. Another one was really pouring into me with communication, right? Another one's pouring into me with relationships and stuff. This is the friend that I called 20+ year marriage, who, hey, help me and my girl out. And I remember my now wife was telling me one time, she's like, you're spending a lot of time with so-and-so, and he's really good at business, but like, he's never home. He's always traveling. I was like, babe, if I need business advice, that's who I call. If I need relationship advice, I call somebody else. If I need finance advice, I call somebody else. Right. So it's also being intentional, and also kind of being picky about who you surround yourself with. Not just anybody's going to, yep, let's hang out. You have to have some form of intentionality around that group that you set yourself around with, because group mentality is scary. When you want to fit in, our reptile brain wants to fit in. Excommunication back in the day meant death. That's why public speaking is one of the biggest fears. You're not in any grave danger, but you're afraid to get in front of a crowd. Why? Because you don't want to be rejected, because rejection used to mean death. So be very careful of the crowds you pick. Be very intentional on those people that you surround yourself with, because that crowd mentality can pull you in a current that you don't necessarily want to go. And sometimes that current's going to be too weak until it's too strong for you to swim against it. And I would say starting with spending some time quiet, meditation. For me, I had to ask myself, what did I want out of life? What was I going for? And when I decided, actually, when my dad said those words, set your standard and demand it, he also was in the conversation of like, hey, if anything were to happen with a girl, you were to have a kid, you do know you're gonna have to bring that girl and that kid home to mom. Because my dad also was like, real talk, if you have a kid, are you gonna abandon it? What kind of man do you want to be for your kid? So then I'm thinking like, well, no, I want to be a family man. Okay, if I want to be a family man, what kind of behavior should I be doing? Maybe I should be intentional on the woman I have relations with, because I mean there is a repercussion that can happen if a kid were to come. Are you committed to that kid? Of course. Well, what's going to be beneficial for that kid? I would love to show the kid a loving relationship. Okay, so cultivate a loving relationship. How do you cultivate a loving relationship? Find a woman who matches the values as you, high quality woman that matches your values. How do you do that? Be a high quality, high valued man. Okay, how do I do that? And those were how my thought processes went to, okay, I want a family. I want a family. I want to be able to provide for that family. I want to spend time with my family. Let me start now. I'm looking at these guys who have families, who have committed relationships, who are successful in their regard, able to spend time. Hey, man, how'd you do it? Hey, you mind if I shadow you? Let's talk a little bit. Oh, I started doing what they were doing. I started picking up some of those habits. And then next thing I know, some of those became friends, became mentors, became peers.
So if you're listening to this, and no judgment, and your life isn't going the way that you like, ask yourself if you think about your life as intentionally as Ted is describing, because I think that is, I've been thinking about this a lot. It's funny you just said that, because literally last night and today was thinking about the people that I've known in my life, where I said yes and they said no, or I said no and they said yes, or I went right and they went left, and the reasons why we made those choices, and the vast differences in the outcomes that has been result of that. And so if you're sitting at home listening to this and you're like, gosh, Ted seems to have it all figured out, the way to have it all figured out is to try to figure things out every time you make a decision. I'm going to figure out what's the best decision for me. I'm going to consciously make decisions using a compass that I believe in, or a map that I believe in, right? And so, Ted, I applaud you for that, but I think it's a really terrific example. It's not to say that Ted's method or path has been correct, or his path has been correct, but the method of intelligently and deliberately going about planning the man or the woman that you want to become or be, I think that's incredibly powerful and worth the price of admission from today's listening experience. Ted, there's two questions that I ask everybody who comes on the show, and I'd like to ask you those two questions now. Are you ready?
Let's go. Actually, can I do one reflection on what you just said?
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
About the path, because I mean, about having it figured out and everything. I love using the example of the first probe to Mars. And in space, obviously you shoot something in a certain direction, it's going to go that direction until an outside force pushes it in a different direction. Well, on the way to Mars, exactly.
Well said, sir.
Well, so you have the correction thrusters, right? And the most amazing thing is, in its trajectory to its destination, 90% of the time it's off course. But those correction adjusters still lets it reach its destination. So to your point, it's not, I didn't sit down and think about this once. This is, like I mentioned, I'm writing it in my journal. Hey, where am I going? What's going on? There's always course correction to be made, because even if I spend 90% of my time off course, as long as I'm being intentional, I make those course corrections, I'm confident that I could still get to the destination. Yes, now I'm ready for those two questions.
Oh, that's beautiful, though. I'm glad you interrupted. The first question, Ted, is if you had access to unlimited financial capital, how would you profitably grow your business?
Ooh. Unlimited financial capital, profitably grow my business. Well, I would probably just work on getting the message out there. Eyeballs. eyeballs. I think this is a time where audience is huge, and I don't need a big audience, just a committed audience. You know, I'd take 1,000 committed fans over 1 million washy fans any day. And with that in mind, um, I would probably want to bring experiences to those that follow, because as I mentioned, community is huge, but the experience is where that magic happens. So with unlimited financial resources, I would build out challenges for men to go through, and I would just hope that the experience is so good that the word of mouth even builds that even further.
Love it. Question number 2. If you had to give up everything that you've ever done for a living or professionally and start something totally new that you've never tried before, what do you think that might be?
Am I trying to make a living off this new thing that I start?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I think like piano. Like art. Like I
Cool.
want to express myself artistically in the world. That's what I would do.
Yeah. I think it's probably pretty easy to start being a professional pianist in your 30s. I'm just giving you shit.
I'm actually committed to buy a piano here for the
Nice.
new year. So
That's awesome. That's a great answer. What I find is the people that are the most committed on their path are the ones that pick sort of the most like random second answer.
yeah.
You know, it's like, well, I never thought about it before. One of the most successful people I know was like, I guess I'd sit on the beach and rent surfboards. I don't know. Like, and it's like, yeah, because you're on the right path. Whereas when somebody goes like, oh, I know exactly what I would do. It's like, okay, that's your dream.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be an Uber driver. That's what my wife would tell you my answer would be.
I did that for fun when I was a little bit younger. I did it briefly, but I did it for fun. I didn't need the money. I was working. I had a business and a job, and I would do Uber like once in a while just to like hear the stories and dirty up my car.
Yeah. I want to hear stories, meet people, talk to
Yeah,
them.
bro. I love it. Okay, man. Well, so Ted, if anybody is still on this listening to us now, it's because they really like you, your message, your story, and your cause. So if that person is out there listening, what would you say to them, and how can they find you?
Well, first I would say thank you, and make sure you give Jason his flowers, because this is an amazing show that he's got going on, and I appreciate you, and keep going out there and crush it. If you guys are liking what you hear and you'd love to follow the Modern Man support in any way, shape, or form, we're pretty easy to find. themodernmanpodcast.com, or you could find us on Instagram at the Modern Man Podcast. And we're also on Facebook, YouTube at the Modern Man Podcast. And yeah, we have new episodes every week, and we have a lot of more stuff that's rolling out for you guys.
Ted, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your unique and powerful view of the world.
Thank you. My pleasure.